Thank you very much for the invitation to come and present to you today. And thank you, a special thank you to Louis, who really introduced Jiao Ten and I when we were working on a co-authored publication this past year on precision animal management and digital twins and how they can overlap and start to guide us in the future. So let me do this. So what will animal or livestock production look like in 20 years, 50 years, or 100 years? I like to start that because I want everybody to be thinking what it should look like. And how many people in this room have never been on a livestock facility or in a livestock facility? You have all been on livestock facilities? Oh, very good. Okay, well, this is probably old hat for you. I wasn't sure what the audience would be like. So I wanted to sort of introduce what we are faced with in the animal production. So this is a grow finish facility. A typical grow finish facility for swine has about 1,200 head in there. And those piglets come in at about 8 weeks of age, so about this big. And they stay for about 4 months until they're about 6 months of age. This is a broiler facility. This is a facility would hold generally about 20,000 birds. This is a layer facility. Layers, depending on the size of the barn, can hold up to 100,000 birds in one facility. And those are mobile. They can fly up and they can be on the ground. And they're highly integrated on the egg side. So when the eggs are laid, all of that is mechanically collected and cleaned and packaged. But on the animal side, we're really lacking in the technology for the animal side. And dairy barns vary greatly in size. These animals are probably have the most technology of any of the animal facilities. And this is a small barn. They can be up to, I think the largest one in the world is 130,000 hours under load. And you guys all know what beef cattle facilities look like, right? Because you're in the state of Texas. I come from the state of Nebraska. We have a lot of beef cattle there as well. So beef cattle are extensively raised. When they come to the finishing phase, they are brought to a feedlot and they are fed for up to a year to really get that marbling in the meat, make it really juicy like the customers like. So what are we asking animal caretakers to do? What tasks do we ask them to do? And that's where we need to look for automation. So of course, we're asking them to do animal production. So how are we going to produce meat and milk and eggs, right? So they have to manage all of that. They have to look at those animals and diagnose and treat injuries and disease. We have to provide them with a balanced diet at appropriate levels and at appropriate times of day. We have to provide thermal comfort, and mostly, except for beef cattle, they are in a house, so we're looking at mechanical ventilation in a lot of cases, not all cases. We have to manage the waste, whether that is through slats in the floor or whether that's through bedding that gets removed on a regular basis. We have to manage that waste. And next generation of caretakers, we have to train them. A lot of times these caretakers aren't from a farming background. So we have to help them understand what they're looking for. And we do this all and try to maintain sustainability. So what does sustainability mean to you? So for the general public, when you say my production is sustainable, the very first thing they're going to think of is environmental sustainability, right? We are taking care of the waste. If you don't take care of the waste, you can be shut down overnight. That is a fact. So we have to be environmentally sustainable. However, if you think about it from the producer side, they aren't going to be in business if they aren't economically sustainable. If they aren't making a profit, they aren't getting paid for their labor, why would they do that, right? So we have to make sure they can be economically sustainable as well. And the third one that we forget about a lot is social sustainability. If we don't have a customer base that wants to purchase our product, we are no longer sustainable, right? So we have to answer those social sustainability issues. So when we start looking at adding technology, I like to back up and see how other industries have really modernized. So if you look at industry, we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and we are coming to cyber physical systems. We've moved past computers and automation and moving on to cyber physical systems. So this is an example of, it's a demonstration site, but in industry and in production of products, we are using a lot of cameras and a lot of robotics. So you can see this robot system is picking out certain colors, it's rotating them, and it's filling boxes. So when we start modernizing animal production, what can we learn from other industries? That's the point of this slide. So I say agricultural is the last automation frontier. It's a very exciting time to be working in automation and agriculture. I would say in agriculture, we really are somewhere between the third and the fourth industrial revolution, right? We are now applying technology, we're doing automation, we're starting to apply some cyber physical systems as well, but mostly we are in the third. So what are our challenges that we need to answer today for our livestock producers? And it's sort of, if we look at what we're asking our animal caretakers to give, it's sort of the same things. How are we going to ensure animal well-being? How are we going to minimize antibiotic use? Let me look and see what this chat is, making sure, okay. Just making sure everybody can hear. Antibiotic use, if we overuse antibiotics, it can go in the waste stream. We can then have a social problem and a waste management problem with increases in antibiotic resistance, right? We have to maintain all aspects of sustainability. These are old problems that we just need to maintain, right? Making sure our animals are cool and at the right temperature, and managing that waste and that odor. And we also have to start looking towards where are we going to get the next generation of animal caretakers. So when we look to the future of animal ag, my questions are, should we employ technology? What technology should we employ? What are the implications of employing that technology? Who makes these decisions? Who's making the decisions on what technology and how to move forward? How can we be impactful for animal care and the animal caretaker? And who do we need to put on the team to make these decisions and to move forward? So right now I'm working in an area called precision livestock farming or precision animal management, and I use those interchangeably. And the definition of that is really important. We have to understand the definition. And that is, precision livestock farming is developing tools for utilizing real-time data on individual animals to aid in management decisions. And I have highlighted a few of those words, and that's because they're key, right? We are developing tools to aid management decisions. We aren't developing systems to take care of animals. That's a very clear distinction we have to make. We are using real-time data, so we aren't collecting data, taking it back to the lab, analyzing it, bringing it back and making the decision tomorrow, the next day, or the next group of animals, right? We're using real-time data to make those management decisions. And then individual animals is where our goal is. We are there in dairy cattle, mostly. We are there a lot in adults breeding swine. Poultry, we have a long ways to go before we get to individual animal, but that's our goal. So I want to give you a couple examples of research in PLF. So once again, we have these tasks and we need to think about how to apply technology to remove these tasks from our animal caretakers, right? So we need to identify areas for automation, and every single species and every single growth stage of those species has unique solutions, because we're asking our animal caretakers to do different things in each of these different systems, right? So we're gonna focus on swine today, and I have one example in growing finishing swine and one example in adult swine. So here I'm giving you an example. This is an animal caretaker walking through the barn, and they're looking at this is a research pen. So this pen only has 40 pigs in it. Grow finish facilities can have up to 200 pigs in a pen. So I'm asking you, like the animal caretaker walks through there, they have lots of things on their list to do, and they have to look at this pen quickly and determine which of those animals, if any of them, have been injured or are sick that need treated. And then at the end of the life, they have to go through here just by visual and pick out which of these animals are ready to go to slaughter. Okay, so those are the two tasks. Let me go back. Those are the two tasks that I think automation can play a serious role in grow finish swine: illness detection and weight estimations. So when we look at illness detection, how do we select what technology we want to apply for our animal caretakers? And is it a benefit? So let's think about that. So the financial impacts of different diseases, and I just pulled this out of the literature, can range between $8.50 and $26 per pig. And I think that is not only the treatment, but the subsequent decrease in production. So understanding and early detection of illness really has a substantial cost benefit to the producer. Once again, we can't mass treat the animals in the barn because it can get into the waste, and it has can cause, or has theorized to be causing antibiotic resistance. So we can't just mass treat them, and we just for the sake of the animal, we have to know which animals are sick and to treat them. So besides your eyes and ears, what technology can we apply? And I put 3 things up there. We can take their body temperature. That's what vets normally do. We can look at thermal images, and I want to tell you why I don't think either one of those are a good solution. And then, is there something else? So with body temperature is very much impacted by the animal's activity level, right? This is actually cattle body temperature, and this is when they left the pen here. They got to the holding facility, then the square they got back to their holding pen. Those pigs or those cattle were not moved very far, and they were walked slowly. They were not run down to the facility. So if you can imagine what body temperature does, if you take a pig out of a pen and they run down the aisle a couple times before you actually get them in the chute to take their body temperature, is that body temperature really going to give you some good indications whether the animal is sick or not? If we take a thermal image, is the thermal image a good indicator of whether that animal has a disease or something? And I will say that you have to be very careful when you use thermal images to detect body temperature, because the skin is an organ that does a lot of it's a thermoregulatory organ. So as the temperature increases, the skin surface also gets increased blood flow, and that blood flow increases the surface temperature. So just taking a thermal image of a pig isn't going to tell you whether they are sick or not. So is there another indirect measure? And so actually we saw some data early on that suggested that this might work. But if you think about yourself, when you get sick, what is the first thing you do? You stop moving and you stop eating, right? Those two things, you back off of feed. So we developed an RFID system that could monitor how many minutes a day a pig spends at the feeder. So we looked at different RFID systems and different frequency ranges, and we chose low frequency tags, passive tags. There are two types of RFID. There's a passive tag, which requires no battery and has like a unlimited life. And I put that in quotes because pigs are hard on equipment, right? And so they can actually pull them out of the ears. But generally they have an unlimited life. They're fairly lightweight, not light enough weight for small pigs, but for finishing pigs for sure. And they're relatively inexpensive. And I put that in quotes too, because everything that costs money is important to a farmer. So we're talking about $2 a tag. Active tags are really interesting. They're like an indoor GPS, and you can track a tag around a facility. They're heavier. They require a battery, so they have a limited life. They're quite a bit more expensive. They're quite a bit heavier. So they would be an okay technology for maybe a dairy cow that is going to be in the system a lot longer and has a higher value. Grow finished pig for 40 or for 4 months in the finishing facility, this is not a good solution. Those are about $40 tags and they're pretty heavy. So we went with low frequency RFID, and this is the system. Let's see, can I get rid of that? I don't know how I can get rid of that. This is the system as it says. We have a reader unit right here. And that reader unit controls a multiplexer that sits in the front panel here and 5 antennas. The downside with low frequency RFID is you really have to have an antenna for every spot that you want to monitor, because if 2 tags are equal distance from the antenna, they cancel each other out. So it's important that we have an antenna for every single feeding space here. We also instrumented waters here, so when their head is in between these 2 panels and the antenna is here, that it can read their RFID number. We have the antenna at an angle, so when they're little, their head's in farther, it picks their head up. And as they grow, their head doesn't go in as far, so it reads them from their farther out as well. So feeding behavior, what do we get? So what you're looking at is total time that they spent at the feeder during the 110 days that they were in the barn. So this is 40 pigs, individual time at the feeder from the first day that they arrived at 8 weeks to when they left the barn. And if you look at all of those together, it looks like chaos, right? Do you see anything that could be useful there? And I would say, when you look at it like this, no. However, when you start peeling apart that data and start looking at individual animals, you can then see patterns emerging. So the dotted line is actually the time one individual pig spent at the feeder every single day. So we just summed up all of that time. And the red line is a model. It's a very simple model. It's basically a linear regression through the days there. So we do that linear regression to 30 days, and then we just use a 30-day window to do a linear regression. And what we're doing is we're predicting the next day. So we take 30 days, we predict the 31st day. Then we look at the prediction of that 31st day with actually what happens. And if they're more than 2.5 standard deviations apart, we put up a flag, and the flag is here. And so you can see in this example, we see 3 flags, and the animal caretaker, who had 35 years of experience, was working in a research barn, found that pig and she treated that pig for pneumonia. So why I give you that information on that animal caretaker is it's not because that animal caretaker didn't do her job. It is seriously a difficult job, and understand those pigs change their behavior when you walk in the barn. So if you think about when you have a cold and you go to the office, right? And you're not feeling well, but you have to be there for X, Y, or Z. And you run into a colleague in the hallway and they say, "How are you doing today?" Think about how you change your posture, how you change your voice, right? You stand up and you go, "Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?" Even though you don't feel good, you change your behavior. So think about that in relation to the pig. The pig is doing the same thing. You walk in the barn, they're automatically don't want to be the sick pig in the group, so they automatically are changing their behavior a little bit. So we saw this when we electronically monitor these pigs. We can see what's happening in that animal with 24/7 throughout the day. And where an animal caretaker is going to be in that barn for a few minutes throughout the entire day, right? Or maybe a couple times for a few minutes a day. So here's another case. This is a slow starting pig, right? This pig came into the barn. It spent 35 days below 10 minutes a day at the feeder. So at what point do you raise the red flag? That's where we're at. Did they not find the feeder? Were they sick? Were they low pig on the totem pole and didn't have time at the feeder? I don't know that answer. This pig was treated for pneumonia on day 18, but it really didn't bounce back. Like the other pig, when it was treated for pneumonia, it came right back and started doing better. This pig did not. It eventually started going up about day 40 or 45. It started increasing its time at the feeder. So being able to identify those pigs is key, right? It's really hard to build those models, however, because our golden data, our golden standard data is caretaker measurements, right? When a caretaker comes into the barn, walks the pen, marks down which pigs, that's what we're using to model our data with. That is not the best way to do it because they're missing animals, as we can see, right? Or they say some animals are sick and really they aren't sick. So it's really hard. That data is really hard. So when we move on to weight estimation, is this beneficial to the producer to have a system to monitor weight? This is old, right? It's 2012, but it's what I found to make this example. So if you are 5% error with your eyes compared to what the pig actually weighs, if you're 5% light, that can cost you almost over $8 per animal, right? If you're heavy, it's not as big a deal. It's under $3. There was a study, once again, it was pretty old, but they had producers guessing what weight the pigs were and then weighing the pigs, and there was about a 20% error. If you are 20% light, based on this cost estimate, it's almost a $20 hit. So it's really important if you can target these weights a little bit tighter than 5 and 10%. So how are you going to select what sensor to measure weight, right? What is the best one? Well, I can tell you that weighing a group of pigs in a finishing barn, there's 1,200 head of pigs in a barn. If you assume 30 seconds to weigh each animal, and yes, I have a lot of students that are collecting data, but if you're doing this in a barn, you're taking at least 2 people to weigh a barn full of pigs. 30 seconds, an animal that's 10-hour day. How many producers are ever gonna weigh those animals? They can't, right? They have so many other things to do, there's no way they can weigh it. So can we automate that? So one solution, and it's out there on the market, is we put scales in the pen, and as the pigs walk through, it weighs them and records them. So the problem with this solution is that if, as an engineer, when you have moving parts, you automatically have maintenance. And when you have maintenance, you automatically have time engaged, right? So this is a hard system to maintain. And this is an old system, that's why this system hasn't caught on. It's expensive because there's a lot of metal there, takes a lot of maintenance to maintain. So can we do the same thing with images? And this is for, so an image has an array of, it has 3 arrays, one for the intensity of red, one for the intensity of green, and one for the intensity of blue, and you can merge those together. And we can then find the pig and estimate the area. We can also do that with a depth image. And what is a depth image? A depth image, these are low-cost depth image cameras here. And what it does, instead of intensity of colors of light, it gives you the distance from the camera to every pixel in the image. So this is just an example. That's what it would look like. If we invert that image, then you can see the pig, quote unquote, standing. This is an example of a depth image. This is an image taken with a time of flight camera. This was actually a Connect version 2 camera. And this is a sow walking through a corridor in an ESF system. So in order for us to estimate weight, what we do is we remove the head digitally, remove the tail digitally, and then sum up all of those columns of data, and then do a little conversion from pixels to square centimeters, and then we can estimate volume. And that estimate of volume to mass actually has an R-squared of 0.99. We've also done this with point clouds, and we get close. We aren't quite as good with point clouds, and partially because of how we collected the data. So the summary, so what are the errors associated with that? I presented this to a producer group, and I had a gentleman who challenged me, can you do better? And I'm like, yeah, okay, 0.9909, I thought we were pretty good, but okay, we can do better. So what are the errors associated with that? Do we have an indication of how fat or lean that pig is? Because if the pig is very lean tissue weighs more than fat tissue does. So that could be one source of error, right? Could we have errors in volume? Could we use a better camera? This data here was collected with the Connect version 1, and that's a structured light camera. If you know anything about that, it puts a little grid of points across the image, and it measures the distance between those points. So you get kind of a little jagged edge. So could we do better with our volume measurement? Absolutely. Could we select a better model to account for some of these things? Yes, we could. But how good is our actual weights, right? And here is a pig on a scale for 15 seconds. I understand you don't necessarily leave a pig on the scale for 15 seconds. But the point is that any of these weights you see flashing up here could have been pulled and saved in the system. So these are weights in pounds, not kilograms. But do you have a guess on what the range is on those weights you saw flying up there?
240 to 245.
So you think five pounds?
What I recall.
Yeah. You missed one, but yeah, 247. So some of our error in that equation is based on how well we can weigh the animals, right? And it isn't the accuracy of the scale itself, because the accuracy of the scale, when you put a weight on it, is half a pound or 0.1 pounds, right? The scales are accurate. It is the movement of that pig on the scale that makes the scale bounce. And if you go back here, you can see we have more variation on weight as the pig gets older than we do when they are little. You have more mass moving on that scale, so you have more variability. So the same person that challenged me told me last week, he doesn't trust scale weights anymore at all. He just wants to do vision. That's it. He's convinced. So this is a system that we've set up, and you can see we have a camera here, and when the pigs come to drink, and in a different system, we have an instrument on what dry feeder. So when they come to eat and drink, we capture an image, and we automatically tag that image with the RFID number. So we can know which pig we're capturing a weight on. Now, the one thing I would like to work on is sometimes we put these cameras up, or there's cameras that you can buy to put up, but they don't tag the animal. So you're just getting an average weight of the pen. My question is, how different is it when you average all the images compared to when you average the weights of all the pigs in a pen, right? Because if you have 40 pigs in a pen and you have one pig that goes to the drinker or goes to the place that you're taking the images, say 40 times a day, and you have another pig that comes only twice a day, and you're just averaging all those images, it will be a different number than if you average the weights of all the pigs. So that's one thing that we want to work on, but I haven't got there yet. So this is just a video we collected. Of course, we wouldn't use it this way, but it shows you as the pigs come, we're capturing an image, we're estimating the weight, and we're tagging it with an RFID number. So then I had a senior design group work on a bar that's going to automatically put a dot on the animals, just a colored dot on the back of the animals once they've reached a certain weight. So with all good senior design projects, it needs a little bit more work, but we are working on that. So we'd like to put the bar across here. So when we have an animal that we think we want to look at, we tag it with one color. When it has reached its target weight, we can tag it with another number. Because if you give a producer a long list of numbers, they still have to walk in the pen. If you give them not a list of numbers, but visual representation about what color and what if that means, it's much easier, much faster for the producer. So now we're going to move from grow finish to our gestation or our adult pigs. And adult pigs, we are working on breeding, and we're working on caring for those pregnant sows. Currently, a lot of our sows are kept in a system like this. And while the public doesn't think this is the best system, and it might not be the life for a pig, they're doing a lot of great things for those animals here by making sure that animal's eating because they're walking by. They know that animal's pregnant, they check that animal, they know she's eating because there's food in front of her or there's no food in front of her. So while this isn't really the life for a pig, and we're hoping to move away from that, when we go from this system to group housing system, understand there are things that we're losing in that transfer, right? And so how can we take this precision livestock farming approach that is done on a piece of paper, and how can we transfer that to this group of animals here? And so one of the things that I'll talk about now is lameness. When they injure their foot or have a structural default or something like that, how do you find that animal in this pen here? And so we bought a pressure mat so we could tell if a pig was lame and what foot they were lame on. When we purchased that pressure mat, it was for dogs, and the thing that they asked us was, are your pigs potty trained? Of course they're not potty trained, right? So if you saw it had a plastic sheet on it, yes, we tried to protect it to keep it. And actually the pigs, I don't think we ever had a pig pee on the mat, but no, they weren't potty trained. So so that is not a great PLF solution, but it is a great ground truth or that golden standard solution. So what can we take from that mat to apply it to something else? And so this is from the mat. This is every dot there is a footfall, and that is a normal sow. This is a slightly lame sow, and you can see she's taking shorter steps and her steps are closer together. And this is a more severely lame sow. So those steps are closer together. And so how can we apply technology to this situation where we can capture that data without interrupting the animal's day-to-day life? So what we did is on the pressure mat, we put a Connect V2 camera above them and we watched them walk underneath, right? So here is the sow walking. That's a normal sow. And what we did was we made a circle around her shoulders and made a circle around her hips. And then we divided that circle in half and we watched the height of those moving up and down, right? So here are the shoulders. And so I would say she's taken about 2.5 steps in this time. And this are the hips, and you can see we're about 2.5 steps on the hips too. Here is a severely lame sow, but you can see she stops and she sniffs the floor because she really doesn't want to walk too much. So would you guess that is a rear or a front issue? Front? You think it's front?
Yes.
Okay, here's what the shoulders look like. Or she's smelling the ground a little bit. She smells the ground again. And here are the hips. The veterinarian did it right. Yes, it's a front issue, right?
Because I
And-
run a lot, so.
Yeah, you run a lot. Yeah. And so if you count that, she's taken about 9 steps in the same time that the normal sow took 3 steps. Well, that's great and all. How does that apply to, how does that apply to our electronic sow feeding stations, right? We have 250 sows in this area, and I think there are 6 different feeder units, and those feeder units are sitting here. So the pigs come at least once a day to get fed. They eat their given amount and they walk through this corridor. So can we apply that system to here? And I'm going to tell you that's really difficult because that system that I just showed you requires an animal to walk at kind of a regular pace down the hallway, right? And anybody that has been in an ESF system, I will guarantee you that those pigs don't walk at a regular rate, right? You have some that run through that so they can run back and get in line. And you have some that are just standing here, right? So how can we capture that information and make this system actually work in an ESF system? So this is my postdoc's work. And so he's looking at cache, and so people that are doing image processing probably understand this a lot more than I do. But I challenged him with that, and he said, well, let's try the fuse shot method. So we had 2 classes, lame and not lame, and we used different frame lengths. And then we tried both consecutive frames and frames that were just non-consecutive. So this is consecutive frames, and there, we trained it with 1 sow of lame and not lame, up to 10 sows that were lame and not lame. When we used more sows, of course, we were much more accurate. So, but I didn't think we were even doing bad when we only trained with 3 sows. When we trained with 5 sows, we still weren't doing too bad. We got to 93% when we trained with 3 sows on 60-second or 60 frames. That wasn't seconds, it's about 2 seconds worth of frames. But 60 frames consecutively, we were able to get to 93%. Now, understand that those were taken under the same top-down camera. It was a different camera, but the same top-down approach where the sows were walking in a nice, smooth way down the corridor. So when we look at a more realistic approach where the sows are not, you could just take frames of them walking, and we used like 1 second of data to 2 seconds of data, we were about 70% accurate on being able to pick out which sows were lame and which sows were not lame. So I think we're getting there. We aren't 100% there, but I think we're getting to something that is more reasonable to apply to that. So in conclusion, so these are the questions I ask. Should we employ technology? What technology? What are the implications? How can we be impactful, and who should be on our team? So if we apply technology to the thermal environment, we can have a smart ventilation system, right? That can maybe cool more at night or apply different technologies to different parts of the barn. We can separate out our waste so we can, and maybe reduce odor generation. I think really where PLF is focusing a lot on now is this technology to improve animal well-being and to identify sick animals. So that's really where a lot of the PLF or precision livestock farming work is right now. When we start moving into sustainability, we might be able to improve our tracking methods of where the animals came from. And really, when we start to apply technology to a barn, we're changing the job in the barn. So instead of asking people to come to the barn and milk cows 3 times a day, or come to the barn and feed my pigs and check on them twice a day, I'm asking them to come in, of course, look at the animals, but also, can you maintain a computer system? I think that's a different job. It takes different skills, and I think we can then recruit new people into the animal industry if we do it right. So what technology should we use? So I have a lot of technology. I didn't go into this a lot, but really it's key to keep the technology independent of the animals. Try to not interfere with the animals. I mean, room and boluses, of course, and RFID are going to be on the animal. But the more we can keep off the animal, or the more we can not disrupt the animal, the better, and the higher, and it's easier to maintain. We need to understand the pluses and minuses of the different technology and try new things, always try new things. So implications or threats. When we start applying technology, we have to be mindful of these. So when we start putting more things on the cloud for analysis, understand that we are gonna suffer technical failures, and we have to be mindful of cybersecurity. We don't want to put producers at risk, right? When we apply technology to the barn, and I have a video for this later, we cannot compromise biosecurity, right? We have to maintain biosecurity even though we put technology in the barn. We have to be very careful when we develop these technologies, and especially when we're using machine learning, is we have to make sure that we're validating it not on a few animals, not on 100 animals in one farm, but make sure that we really fully test it and use data from across multiple different locations and multiple different animals. we also need to talk to producers, so we focus on important traits and not just on ones that interest us, right? We need to make sure that the caretakers aren't spending so much time maintaining a system that they aren't checking on the animal, right? It needs to be aiding and not consuming too much time. And then we also have to be very careful when we start talking about applying a lot of technology that we don't objectify the animals. The public doesn't want to know that we are caring for the animals using only computer systems. We have to make sure that when we talk to the public, we are aiding the animal caretakers in taking care of their animals. And so this was the first time we installed this system in the barn. Yes, I have antennas and computer equipment there. I have computer equipment there. And we have to make sure that we can allow them to clean. And I will tell you, this was the first time I walked in the barn after we installed all this equipment. And yeah, the only reason I could stand there and take this nice video is you can see this was the last pen he was cleaning and not the first pen he was cleaning. And so I could see that the other 5 pens had made it through the cleaning process, so I could take the video and not freak out. But that's a lot of equipment in that barn, and so we have to make sure that it's prepared to be in the barn. We can't ask producers to go out, oh, please don't spray down this camera, or please can you cover up the camera before you clean? That's not gonna work. So when we talk about this to producers, I understand producers don't have time to sort through data. They just want information. They want the red flag. They don't wanna look at the data. Systems can't take longer to care for the animals than taking care of the animals themselves, right? We need to focus on solution items that make the producer more efficient. So we need to ask producers what could help them. It doesn't mean that we have to only do what they say, but we do have to listen to them, right? Know the limitations of your data and be honest about the limitations of your data. Understand that if you don't have that good ground truth, it's not going to result in good models, regardless of how sophisticated of AI you can apply to it, right? Be prepared to be in the environment like I showed. So biosecurity is critical. You cannot compromise biosecurity. And listen. Listen to producers, listen to other people. That's how we're gonna make strides, is working together. Pay very close attention to what other people are saying. Even if you don't agree with them, listen and take notes, because there's information there. Who do we put on our team to make PLF really come to be? Engineers, animal scientists, computer and data scientists, veterinarians, producers, sociologists, consumers, economists. Oops, I guess that was it. Are there others? Probably, right? This has to be a team effort. If we're gonna really change the way we do animal production, it has to be a team effort. And with that, this is my team from a couple years ago. So I don't do this in a vacuum. I have a big team that works together to make this happen. And I like this quote, we're limited only by our imagination and our will to act. So with that, I'll take any questions you have.
So thank you for the presentation.
Thank
It
you.
was really informative. I have a question about replacing sensors with cameras. Like, for example, you install RFID on every cattle, and did you try to and it is primarily used for identifying individual animals. Have you done experiments on using RGB cameras to identify cattle to replace RFIDs?
We're working on that, and we're working in pigs. the nice thing about either a tag or an RFID tag is I know pig A is always pig A, right? When we go to visual ID, it's hard to know that pig A is always pig A, but we're working on it. Yeah, it would be, so the downside to that is the cost of the RFID system and all of the hardware that has to go in that barn and all of the technology. It would be much simpler if I knew that pig A was at the feeder this long and pig B was at the feeder this long, right? And we could do it with a camera, but we just aren't quite there yet. But we are working on that, yes.
So you think it's beneficial to shift to camera and get rid of the sensors if it's possible?
Yeah, I think yes, but we have to have a way to make sure that we can identify the individual animal. The other thing in pigs is when you talk about putting an RFID tag in every single pig and 1,200 head barn, the cost of that is expensive. They're $2 a tag. The time it takes to put all those tags in is costly, right? We're probably talking 4 hours at the minimum to put all those tags in, right? And the third thing is that ear actually has value because they sell it to the pet food market. I've been told that's one of the most expensive cuts of meat off the pig, and the pet food industry doesn't want a hole in their ear. So I don't think your dog cares, but I think the pet food industry cares. So there's a lot of pressure to move away from using tags, but to answer your question, we're not quite there yet.
I was curious about your time at the feeder, and when you see short durations at the feeder, it makes sense that animal may be ill or have some kind of a issue. But also wondering about if you see an animal that spends excess time at the feeder, because for example, with horses, well documented when they have tooth problems that it takes them a lot longer to eat. So I mean, you can kind of judge a horse and it takes longer to eat 3 pounds of grain than the average horse. It's probably got a tooth problem.
And does that happen in young horses as well as older horses, or?
Well, older horses tend to have more tooth issues, so we
Right.
tend to see it in older horses more, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't looked into that. I mean, we did a little bit at the beginning. We didn't really see any correlations that really jumped out to us, but I think that would be something interesting. I don't know if, and maybe this is a question for our veterinarian in the room, if a pig has an ulcer, like a stomach ulcer, would that take them longer to consume feed? I don't know.
You got me.
I don't know, but
don't have this.
yeah, I know. So I think there's just a lot of things we don't know, right? But yeah, I think looking at, because you saw some of those big pigs. Some of those big pigs are pigs sleeping in the feeder too. So,
We do have cameras monitoring the feeding box. We know how much food is eating, sort of measuring the time. That's probably because the particular setup we have here might not be
right.
applicable in the swine production.
Yeah, we do have cameras on the barn. We don't have cameras in every pen. And it's hard to identify all the pigs because they look alike, right? That's one of our research projects is how we can do that.
You know, I talk like an animal scientist now. So
Very good, very good.
it's good. Any other questions?
I have some questions.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna go to the details about the system. I'm curious about the behind the scenes and also the feedback you got from the producers, because you're working straight with producers.
Yep.
I like that picture that you show, like they like cleaning everything, and that's what we try to show people, like, hey, you gotta be prepared for that.
Right.
So after you've done everything, what's the feedback? What's like, are they seeing like a return on using that? I know it's a research, but are they like, I can use that for my day-to-day, I can apply that to something? How's the feedback?
So right now, yeah, we call them, we're like, oh, can you go check these animals? I think these animals are down. And we aren't very good at predicting. we can post look at it and find animals that were sick. But looking at day to day, we are not very good at doing that yet. We had the most interesting thing ever. We had a handful of pigs that didn't go to the drinker. Right? Completely blew my mind because I thought we really needed to look at feed and not water because they have to drink. They have to consume water, regardless of how sick they are. They don't have to eat. And I had pigs in every pen and pigs in every batch of pigs we have done that did not go to the drinker. And so that was one thing that we called and we said, okay, these pigs, and I gave him a list, these pigs are not going to the drinker. Can you go and verify that they are okay? Because we were really concerned. And he calls me and he says, no, there's nothing wrong with those pigs. So we actually put cameras up and we tracked them because how are they surviving without water? And our best guess right now is there is a sprinkle cool system in the barn. And we think that they're licking water off the floor, but I can't believe that they're actually getting enough water for that, but that's our current theory. So bottom line is, yes, they're using the system. No, we're not very good at predicting yet, but our weights are pretty good.
And now, what's the background? What are you using? Because I try to push hard on data integration.
Yep.
Because you have RFID, you have cameras, you might have the notes from the folks over there. What's the background? How much data you need to store from all the videos? How much data you need to process from all the videos and everything? How are you doing on the background? Do you have a server? Do you have a computer? What do you use on the background?
So right now we are recording, so the stuff coming off the RFID system is very small. You don't have to worry about that. That's a very small data file. And that is actually, we collect that and it goes to a database that's on the cloud and we can pull down all that information. That is not a problem. The images that are collected, right now we're collecting 5 images every time the pig goes to drink and tagging them. Those are stored on a RAD drive and we bring that back and analyze it. We aren't functional yet. So. But yeah, data integration is going to be key as we build up these systems, and then we're going to know exactly what measurements we need to take, what measurements save the producer the most money, and what measurements are most indicative of illness or most indicative of disease.
Tami, enjoyed your presentation. Do you address commercialization prospects at the moment for the pig industry, hog industry? Is anything close to being commercialized?
Yeah, so in the swine industry, there's a couple things. I don't know, do you know SoundTalks?
No.
SoundTalks was developed out of Catholic University of Leuven by Daniel Berkmans, and they have commercialized that system. That system is actually pretty complex. They hang microphones in a pig barn and they're listening to the pig's cough. And they can sort out all the mechanical, because pig barn is really loud. They can sort out all the mechanical sounds, and they can also determine if it's a productive, like a cough from dust or a cough from mud. They can do that. That system is out and available. I think it's getting used a little bit in Europe. It's not getting used here yet. And I think it goes back to, does it provide enough value for the producer? We're working, but we aren't there yet.
Do we have any questions from the online attendees?
There is a message.
You are running out of time, but you can talk with some kind of after. It's about
I think there was a
3 hours.
message in the chat.
Oh,
Oh,
is there
there's
a
one question. You can mute yourself to ask question directly if you want.
Of course, I couldn't get it to go in, and I can't get it to come back. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, let's thank our speaker again, and thank you for joining.